Hello and thanks for joining us once again here on India on 99.9 for the home of cricket audio. I'm Nikesh Rugani, journalist, broadcaster, commentator in the UK, and Sarah Waris, my co-host, journalist for Wisden in India. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation. We're going to be here several times a week, as always, discussing everything relating to Team India, whether that be the men's side, the women's side, anything really to do with Indian cricket. And you can find us on your usual podcast app via YouTube and on our very own app, 99.94. So go and download that if you haven't already. Sarah, it's good to see you again. It's been a strange 24 hours or so here in
Yeah.
England and in the UK and around the world, in across the Commonwealth as well, with the passing, sadly, of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Happened last night as we're recording this episode on Friday afternoon, and it's been less than 24 hours since the news was confirmed. Obviously, the nation is in mourning at the moment. Sport, as you would have seen, has taken a hit as well. Of course, the England-South Africa test match wasn't able to get underway on the first day because of rain initially, and then day two has been postponed just as a mark of respect, really. There's been football called off today on Friday as well, and we've just heard actually that all of the weekend's Premier League football matches will also be postponed, and that puts into doubt the rest of the test match, obviously England, but also India's women due to start their series against England on Saturday in Durham, the T20 series. So we'll try and keep across things and see what the ECB decide. We're expecting a decision at some point later on today. The thought process is, from what I'm hearing, is that there very much is a sort of drive to make this happen and just do it with a mark of respect to the Queen and the royal family. So, play the national anthem, maybe have a minute's silence and wear black armbands and those sorts of things. Firstly, just staying on the subject of the Queen, obviously, head of the Commonwealth, India being a Commonwealth country and all those links to Britain, good and bad over centuries. How has the news gone down in India, first and foremost?
Yeah. Yesterday, Virat Kohli got his 100, and just moments after that, the Queen passed away. Um, yeah, there is a sense of mourning. Even the Prime Minister has sent in his condolences. There is the Ministry of Affairs, they've declared a day of mourning on 11th September, which is Sunday. The flag will be hoisted at half mast. So yeah, there is a sense of mourning all over the country. Yeah,
And she had a lot of links to cricket, in
yeah,
fact, because when her father, King George VI, passed away after a battle with lung cancer and the illness that he had, she was in Kenya at the time on a tour of Kenya. She was on safari at the time she found out. And England's cricketers were over in India in 1952, this was, and they were playing the test match in Chennai. It was day one of that particular test match, and that's when the news broke that the king has died and Queen Elizabeth is the new monarch. And day two was postponed of that test match, and India actually went on. They usually had a rest day in between the test matches there anyway, somewhere in the middle. So that was effectively then the rest day, the second day, but it was pushed forward to as a mark of respect and the passing of the king. And that was India's first test victory as well. So, Queen Elizabeth, obviously as sad as it was with King George passing away at that time, I'm sure, Queen Elizabeth, a good omen for Indian cricket. Their first ever test victory, 24th attempt it was for them. Vijay Hazare's side doing the business over England. And she then met the Indian players who toured England in 1952 as well during the Test match at Lord's. Shook hands with all of the players, and there's some great images of that on social media as well. So if you haven't seen them, do go and check them out. And frequently, it wasn't her favourite sport, cricket, but she frequently attended cricket, particularly at Lord's, where Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who passed away last year, was an MCC member, so there was there was always that constant link to cricket. And obviously, being head of the Commonwealth, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, she was the Queen of Ceylon, as it was known then, Sri Lanka, from 1952 to 1972. So she was their monarch, effectively, before Sri Lanka became a republic as well. So lots of links to South Asia and cricket as well. And obviously, we send all our thoughts out to all those affected, the royal family, and we'll keep her in our thoughts. So we don't know, Sarah, if that series is going to go ahead, the England-India T20 series. Well, the series will go ahead, but in terms of the first match, will it be postponed? Will it be pushed back a couple of days? We just don't know at this stage. But as it is, we've got to assume that things will go ahead. Due to take place in Durham, India, of course, Commonwealth Games, again, the link with the royal family and the Queen, Commonwealth Games, silver medalists, England medal-less. And they were getting a lot of stick, England, because it wasn't just the women's cricketers, but the cricketers got a lot of stick in particular, because all of the athletes who were taking part for England in the Commonwealth Games had a medal pocket stitched into their blazers. And at the opening ceremony, a lot of, the Aussies and other countries were saying, hang on a minute, that's a bit presumptuous, just assuming you're going to get a medal. They didn't get a medal in the end. They were beaten by India in the semi-final, and then lost to New Zealand in the bronze medal playoff as well. So India on a bit of a high in T20 cricket at the moment, aren't they?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. This series is just yeah, they've done well overall in the past. They've done very well against most countries, but somehow they have struggled against England, like, except this win in the Commonwealth Games. They have struggled a bit against England in world events. So it would be interesting to see, how India go ahead from here. Probably, with the women's IPL coming up next year, is just sort of a build up to, like, there are so many holes for India to fill, but then with them doing so well in the recent Commonwealth Games, and with you are anticipating the women's IPL next year, so it's just just exciting times ahead, I would say. And I hope India can get off the choker stack off their backs and do well. They've lost the last two T20I series against England. They've lost the ODI series last year against England. They've not really had the best run against England. Probably you can say they've done better against the Australians, who are number one, undoubtedly number one. So yeah, there's so much to improve on, but yeah, as I said, that growth is there, and with the women's IPL next year, it's just very exciting times in women's cricket.
Yeah, indeed. And this is very much Harmanpreet Kaur's India side now. I know she was already doing the T20 duties for some time, but just to be the captain, she's now the Indian women's captain. There's no Mithali Raj coming in for ODIs and test matches. So this is very much her group of players. They all look up to her. She's their leader. Smriti Mandhana, obviously, as the vice captain as well at the moment, and two world-class players in their own right as well. But what they are building now, and we talk about the chokers tag, if you look at the last two major T20 global tournaments, they've only really choked to Australia. And Australia, this Australian side, in all cricket, forget women's cricket, in all cricket, it's one of the greatest sides of all time, and it has been for a few years now.
Yeah.
And of course, England had that little period where, they've come in and dominated for very small periods. There was 2009 when they won the double World Cups, the ODI and the T20s. Then it was all Australia again. Then, England were always up there as well. And then England won the 2017 ODI World Cup. India obviously knocking out the Aussies in the semi-final, and that was a hell of an Aussie side as well. Anyway, but now they're creating this dynasty, the Australians. So to lose to them in the last two major T20 global finals, the World Cup and the Commonwealth Games, is, they can still be very proud of the way they've played in these big tournaments, can't they? And yeah, we talk about bilaterals and needing to right a few wrongs, I suppose, against England in these bilateral series, but they're in a position now where they've got the experience on the big stage. They've got several world-class players. They're still lacking a little bit in certain departments, but with Smriti up at the top, Shafali Verma, Harmanpreet Kaur with the bat, there's three potential world-class players anyway. You got Dipti Sharma, who does a very good job in the middle order, not necessarily with the bat in T20s, but with the ball. She can come in and do a job if there's a crisis management situation that needs to be taken care of with the bat as well, and with the ball as well. It's so good to see that since Julian Goswami has stepped away from T20s and soon to step away from ODIs as well, that the void is starting to be filled. It's probably never going to be filled to that extent. She's an absolute legend, but there are good signs for India going forward, and it's probably, I would say, only Australia above them at the moment in T20 cricket in the world. Where do you stand on that? You still think it's Australia and England at the top of the tree?
No, like we had spoken earlier after the Commonwealth Games finals, that this Indian team, they have a lot of holes to fill. They have a lot of areas which they are not the best at, and despite that, they've constantly been entering the finals, the semi-finals of world events, except the 50 over World Cup this year. It was a one-off, but other than that, they've been consistently reaching the top 4, the top 2, which is brilliant to see. They are not yet the best in so many departments. I was just looking at some stats. The pace bowling department, which you said, after Jhulan's exit in T20I, she last played a T20I in 2018. In this period, India have played around 53 games, taken 299 wickets at an average of 21. But the Pacers, they've not really done that well. They've just picked up over 68 wickets. So, majority of those wickets have come to spin. Um, and only two bowlers have bowled more than 80 overs, which is Shikha Pandey and Arundhati Reddy. The rest, the likes of Renuka Thakur, Pooja Vastrakar, Meghna Singh, they've been playing games here and there. So the pace bowling department is not really um, sought out, like, but despite that, they've been
Yeah.
doing so well. So, yeah, so
But the way, like,
even
if,
in the,
if you're going by
yeah,
just very recent times and in
yeah,
these conditions in England,
yeah,
Renuka Singh Thakur had a
yeah, yeah.
fantastic Commonwealth Games, didn't she? There was only one
Yeah,
game where she was slightly off the boil. Apart from that, did a really sort of Julian Goswami type job, really, in those
yeah,
games that she played. So I think that's a good sign for them going into this
yeah,
T20I series. But you're right, obviously. Look, the pace bowling's never been their biggest strength. It's just been Julian Goswami for so many years, and very little backup from anybody else. There's the odd bowler who comes in from time to time and does a decent job, but nobody anywhere near her consistency. And she's the greatest of all time,
mm,
certainly from India, one of the greatest in the world. Her stats are brilliant. Her performances have been brilliant. She turns up on the biggest stage, but she's not there anymore, and they have to move on. And you're right, despite the fact that they've got a lot of holes in that setup, particularly in T20Is, they just seem to keep
mm,
churning out the results and coming together as a team. The spirit seems really good. Let's talk about the specifics then with bat and ball. I mentioned those three batters at the top there, Smriti, Shafali, and Harmanpreet. There's not much backup, first and foremost, in that. I mean, Jemmy Rodriguez is there, and hopefully she's fit for this series. But if she's not fit, then you kind of feel that there's, even if she is fit, that's four. You probably need a good solid six in your batting lineup in this format. And they just haven't quite got that depth in the batting. But those top four on their day, brilliant. And Jemmy's done it time and time again in the 100 in England as well, and was starting to really show some maturity in the Commonwealth Games, I felt, coming in at number 3 and just playing that role beautifully, almost like, Virat Kohli. And we will talk about Virat Kohli, by the way, if you're listening and thinking, why are they not talking about Kohli's 100? We will, but we're focusing on the women for now. And Jemmy was playing that role beautifully at number 3. First and foremost, how big a miss will it be if she's not in the T20I series, if she's not fit? She pulled out of the 100, of course, with her injury. We don't know if she'll be fit for the T20 series against England. We're not been told anything. Typical BCCI. Just who knows what the situation is, but she's in the squad. If she's not fit, how big a miss will she be? And regardless of her fitness, how big a problem is it that India don't really have that solid middle order coming in at 5 and 6?
Yeah, Jemima, been she's always been there in tough situations. She scored the tough runs. I know. I don't understand why the BCCI selectors have not given her an extended run. She's so talented. In 50 over World Cup, she was omitted, but she's always been there amongst the runs in tough situations. She's very young, but you can always count on her. She's done well in leagues all over the world, even in the 100. Before she was injured, she played a couple of very handy knocks. So yeah, obviously it will be a big miss, and that really changes the batting order too, because now with Gemma at 3 at least, India had a solid top 4, but now with Gemma not there, who bats at number 3? Will it be Meghna? Meghna, she didn't get a chance in the Commonwealth Games, but whenever she's played, no, she's been aggressive. She's been that Shafali Verma type of an aggressor at the top. But is she suited to number 3, or she's opened for majority? She's open, so I don't think India will medal with the top order with the openers. So probably she comes in at number 3, and then Harmanpreet at 4 to kind of bring that experience in. And I'm very excited to see Kiran Navgire in the side. In this recent women's IPL, the short version, whatever you want to call it, she played one innings that just took everyone like, okay, she's here to stay. She's done well in domestic cricket. That's why she was picked in this women's World Cup, which women's IPL, which was this year. So I'm very excited to see how she goes. Probably she'll be number 5 or number 6. So with her in the side, India can possibly have that firepower which they've lacked over these last few years. So very excited to see, especially how she goes.
And the wicket-keeping position is interesting, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because India's women's side across formats is very old school in that regard, in that they play a specialist wicketkeeper, right? It's one of the two Bhatias usually. Danya Bhatia seems to be the one in kind of possession at the moment. Richa Ghosh is the second wicketkeeper now in the T20 squad to face England. Is that a better option just in terms of with the bat? Because surely you can't just be a wicketkeeper now and bat down at number 10 or something. Those days are long, long gone. I mean, even back in the old days, it was, you'd have a wicketkeeper still coming in at 7 or 8, and they might be not that good, but they'd be better than all of your tail enders. It's not the case with India and their women's T20I side in recent times, with Danya Bhatia just coming in so low down the order. It's got to be time to just find somebody who can do a decent enough job behind the stumps, and more than a decent, be a solid international wicketkeeper, but you need runs as well, don't you, from your wicketkeeper? Because at the end of the day, they're an all-rounder. And if you're not picking an all-rounder in that role who can bat as well, then you're wasting a position in your batting lineup, essentially.
Yeah, and the game has changed so much. There's no space for one player with just who can fulfill just one role anymore in either format, I would say. So Richa Ghosh has not been very consistent, but whenever she has batted, she has shown that she can be the one for the future. She's very young. She recently turned 18. So, she's yeah, she's not been consistent, but then you would argue she's not been given a consistent run also. So yeah, Tanya Bhatia, she had the concussion in the Commonwealth Games final, and there were unfortunate, but there were memes around it that Yastika Bhatia was a sub, and there were memes or takes that that at least now India have an extra batter in their side. She couldn't do
Well,
much, but
I mean,
yeah,
it's, we obviously
yeah,
wish her well with the concussions and everything like that, and we take it at face value. But it's happened on
yeah.
a couple of occasions, hasn't it, in big games where she's gone off with concussion, and it's not such a bad thing as long as her health is okay,
Hmm.
because then another batter comes into
Yeah.
the side, and it had to be like for like, and the only problem was that, yeah, you might say extra batter, but the extra sub has to come in at the same position in the batting order that she was going to come, and that was number 10. So
Yeah.
it's not really, when the game's done and dusted like that, it's difficult to come and make an
Hmm.
impact at number 10. So rather than have that situation again, and not the concussion, but just the lack of extra batter there, it's probably a good opportunity really to look at Risha Ghosh through an entire series, because it's a bilateral series. It's not pressure. There's no knockouts. It's not a global tournament. Just this is the opportunity to look at new players, isn't it?
Yeah, and she's been, with Shafali Verma at the top of the order, Richa Ghosh at number 6, 5 or 6. She can be a very, she can be that firepower which India have lacked ever so often, especially with Kiran Navgire now. Hopefully, she gets a game. It'll be very interesting to see how she goes also.
Indeed. We'll move on in just a second. Before we do, we just want to remind you that you can download the 99.94 app, and it's more than just this podcast on our network, of course. Jared Kimber has got Red Inca and also Double Century, which is a look at the history of the game. And there's England on 99.94, there's South Africa, there's West Indies, there's Sri Lanka now as well, which was launched on the day that Sri Lanka beat India in the Asia Cup as well. So lots to keep you busy on there. You can find us on your usual podcast apps on YouTube and via our own 99.94 app, where we'll be here several times a week. Me and Sarah talking about India. And let's move on to the fielding, because that's a massive issue.
Yeah.
We talked about the bowling. They rely on the spinners. There's a couple of quicks coming through, and we'll keep an eye on how all that goes. The fielding has got to be the biggest concern, because the standards aren't great overall anyway
Yeah.
from most of the squad, really, it has to be said. I mean, there's a couple in there who are decent, but and it's not through lack of effort. I mean, maybe they're just, John T. Rhodes keeps applying to be India's fielding coach for the men's side. Just accept the application, stick him with the women's side, and get him working on them as well, because they need more help than anybody really in at that top level of women's cricket, where you've got your Australias, your Indias, your Englands, your South Africas, your New Zealands, your West Indies. These top women's sides in the world. India are the worst by far in the field, and it's cost them on a lot of occasions. We hark back to the previous tour of Australia, where there's those crunch moments and they're dropping catches, they're missing run out opportunities, they're giving twos when they should be giving one. In the crunch stages of matches, they just panic. So mentally, they need to be in a good space as well. They probably need Paddy Upton to come in as
Yeah.
a sports psychologist and tell them how to deal with those crunch moments and help them through that, because that seems to be a massive issue as well. And then the knock-on effect of that is that they're already not too good fielding turns into terrible fielding, and they end up losing these crunch moments of matches. And it's so crucial in T20I cricket, in all cricket now, to be on top of your game in the field at all times, because it saves you runs. You can get the extra wickets. You can put pressure on at crunch times. You don't want to be dropping catches, obviously, at any point of the innings as well. It's a massive issue, isn't it? The fielding within the side, and that's something that needs to be addressed going forward. And it's not just a simple case of let's just pick younger players because they'll be fitter. It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah. And first thing here is, I think, more the mental fitness. Obviously, how to handle pressure. We've spoken a lot about how the women's IPL potentially can help these players handle pressure and do well under pressure. Secondly, it's also physical fitness. I am not very sure what the fitness regime is in the Indian team right now, because the BCCI never keeps us updated, and there's just never a lot of information on the women's team.
It seems
Uh,
like there's a lot of onus
yeah,
on the individuals to do their
yeah,
own thing, right? And
yeah.
there are a lot of individuals in the side. We talked about the Harmanpreet Kaurs, the Smriti Mandanas, and Jamie Rodrigues, and all these girls who play abroad as well,
Mm,
who have picked up things from
yeah,
different professionals around the world, and they seem to take that side of it more seriously, whereas others don't. And I don't want to be disparaging here, but
yeah.
I'm going to say it anyway. When you've got Ramesh Bauer as your coach, as your head coach, I'm not sure fitness was ever top of his agenda. I'm not saying he was completely unfit, but obviously he's not exactly a physical specimen. He ran around, he tried his best, but it's not at the top you would imagine of what he did when he was a player. So
Yeah,
I wonder if he takes it as seriously as a coach. You got to ask the
yeah,
question. I mean, you got to be honest about these things, and you know, we're not saying that we're fitter than Ramesh Bauer or anything like that, but it's just as a professional sportsman or woman, you've got to be fit. And he clearly wasn't when he played for India. He probably could have played more if he'd worked on his fitness. I don't know.
yeah.
But whether or not
Uh,
he takes that as seriously as, say, when Kohli was in charge of the men's team and sort of everybody looked to him as the
mm,
inspiration and the leader. And I know he was the captain and not the coach, but the coaching staff really that they had at the time, they had a fitness coach, they had a fielding coach, all those kinds of things, strength and conditioning coaches. I don't know how much of that is in the women's setup at the moment. And again, we don't really get all that information, and it seems to change from series to series and tournament to tournament, who's involved behind the scenes as well. So it needs to be looked into. And if the men can have 18 people traveling with them to work on all these types of things, why can't the women?
yeah, and I just remembered an interview by Gemma Rodriguez had come. Uh, like, she was giving an interview, just a chat with Ashwin on his YouTube channel, and she was talking about how the players who have played in these leagues abroad, they know, they have seen foreign players, probably doing these drills outside, and they know what to do, how much to do, what not to do, and just understanding their body better, which she said is something that they've learned while playing in England and in Australia. And it's something that in India it probably has not happened till now. Like, this is what she said. uh, the youngsters in India right now, they don't really have an idea about what works for their body, which again, like, there needs to be these individual coaches also, and the BCCI has to take the step to educate these players about what works for them, because probably there's just a guideline, you do this and you do that, but something might not work for one individual player. So this is what Gemma Rodriguez was very vocal about, that we have realized that one thing might work for one cricketer, but it might not work for you. uh, which in Mumbai, like in the Mumbai gyms and all, she see not many people are aware of. So again, it's worth thinking that if you want to be the best in the world, the BCCI in so many levels has been lacking, and yet despite that, these women cricketers have been doing so well consistently. So yeah, just again, just taking the basic initiative by the BCCI, that's all that's needed. But somehow they're not very interested in that also. So
It's like when you watch the Mitali Raj biopic. I don't know if have you seen it
I have
yet?
not yet seen it,
Okay,
no.
well, there's obviously, they focus on a lot of the challenges that not just Mitali, but just Indian women's cricket had when she first came onto the scene and started training with the national side and all those types of things. And even when they met the BCCI, they stated their case for they just wanted money to be able to do
Mm,
basic things. They just wanted proper kit and all that kind of stuff, proper training facilities. They weren't asking to be paid on the same level as the men's players or anything like that at that particular time. And it doesn't seem as though much has changed, really. I mean, they say all the right things, the BCCI, and who knows if the women's IPL is even going to happen. I mean, we're told it is, but until it's actually, we get a
Yeah.
schedule and, franchises are there to be seen and players are being signed and all those types of things, we'll take that with a pinch of salt as well. Even if that happens, though, just the national team, it's not quite as bad as it was then, but it should have
Mm.
moved on a lot more because, right, back then they were getting like hand-me-down ODI shirts from the men's team with
Yeah.
the men's names still on the back, and they have to get the names off, peel them off, and put their own names on. And they're not suited to a woman's body; they're all men's sizes. And it was to that extent where, all right, if you want us to give you more help with kits and stuff, here you go. And it's just basically like match-worn kits from 3 series ago from the men's side, and it has moved on from that, but you know, they just don't seem to care enough about
Yeah.
all these types of things like fitness and fielding. And you talk about going abroad and looking at what Australians and English people do in terms of their fitness, these women cricketers from around the world. That's like a throwback to like colonial times almost with the men, like, oh, let's see what the Gore do in their countries. They must be doing it right. The men's team don't need to do that. I mean, it started with the Dhoni era, really, of
Mm.
fitness and taking all that side of the game seriously, and then Kohli took it to a new level. You've just got to look around Indian men's domestic cricket and just domestic sport as well. Forget cricket. You just look around men's sport in India, and the infrastructure is a lot better, isn't it, across all men's sport, really, particularly cricket in terms of all that. They don't need to look to Australia or England, and Australia need to look
Mm.
to what the hell does Virat Kohli and what do those Indian boys do? Because I know it's not just all about how you look, because some of the female cricketers look in very good shape to the naked eye, and they look like athletes. Uh, but you see Virat Kohli, the way he trains, KL Rahul, all these guys, Bumrah. I mean, I don't want to be superficial about it, but they've taken pictures with their tops off when they've been in the West Indies and stuff, and they've all got six packs and
Yeah.
muscles and zero body fat and all these types of. You go back to Indian men's sides of the past, and they've all got beer bellies. So
Mm.
it's changed dramatically, and
Yeah.
it's not just about the physical look, but it's also about the actual mental side of it, the fitness that suits each individual, and that's easy to do. That is easy to do because you're right. It's almost a case of run 3 laps, do some press ups,
Mm.
do some sit ups, you know, do some catching, and a few dives in the slips or whatever if you're one of the slip catchers, and that's it. But that doesn't suit everyone. Or go and
Yeah.
bowl for 3 hours in the nets. Well, some
Also, what?
bowlers might
Yeah.
not. That might not
Mm.
suit their body. Some bowlers need to bowl
Yeah.
3 hours in the nets to keep their rhythm. Other bowlers need an appropriate amount of rest. So you need individual plans tailored to all these players, and it doesn't seem as though it's happening in the women's game. And I don't know why not, because the BCCI is up there with the very best in the world in doing it in men's cricket. Why can't they do it in women's cricket? The simple answer is they don't care enough.
Yeah. You are in the middle. I was just thinking you're talking so much about fitness and the BCCI should do this and that for the women's team. It just took my mind back to the time when the women's team were not even paid for that there was this article by Izzy in the Telegraph, I think, where the
Yeah,
women players were not paid for more than a year or something.
that's right. Yeah.
uh, yeah, after the T20 World Cup final in 2020. So forget fitness, forget having coaches, and forget all those are big things comparatively. If the women's team are not paid their basic, it's their right, they're not paid that for almost a year, then it's just at the very grassroots level, like something is totally messed up. It's just, and who knows, if that article had not come out, they would not have been paid for a longer time, and uh, we would never have known about it also. So it's just, just the fitness and all. Yeah, you have a great point, but it's just, the basics. And this was just 1.5 years ago, not too long
Yeah.
ago, also in the early 2000s, that we are like, a lot has changed. So
Yeah,
it's,
Izzy
just,
Westbury,
yeah.
he's a colleague of mine or was a colleague of mine at the BBC and at SEN as well on commentary, and she's temporary.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's temporarily or permanently, but she's left the world of cricket for a little while. She's a lawyer, so she's doing all that
Oh.
stuff. But you're right. If that article hadn't have come out, who knows?
Hmm.
Because it created a massive storm really with regards to what was going on in
Yeah.
Indian women's cricket, and it was being highlighted in England, which the
Hmm.
BCCI don't mind if they're getting stick domestically from Indians in India and the rest of the world isn't talking about it. But it's slightly embarrassing when you're meant to be the world's most powerful and richest cricket board and have been for quite some time,
I
and
have
you're
just
not paying
one.
your players.
Yeah, I have just one incident. Like, there are a few journalists who have inside sources with the BCCI, and they are the first ones, to leak, to not leak out, to report the news with sources marked in them. So, during a few years ago, I had written this, like, there was things that BCCI are not very interested in having the women's IPL, because they are not very because the results are not going in their favor, and India had just lost to South Africa. This was in 2021, when, after 1 year they came back and they were playing. So there were so I had written some tweet that, what's wrong with the BCI or something. And this one journalist who's very close, like, he interviews Saurav Ganguly and all very often. So he was the one who commented on my tweet saying that, can you name 15 top players from India? So, it just became a, he's kind of echoing what the BCCI felt at that time. India had just reached the T20 World Cup final a few months ago, and he's commenting on my status saying, can you name 15 top women players from India? And that was just, like, these are the kind of
He
state
I
of
mean,
journalists
people
in
like
India.
that. You're
Yeah.
right. People like that
Yeah.
probably couldn't even name 15 women's cricketers from
Yeah.
around the world because they don't like
Yeah.
women's cricket. They're against it. They don't care. They don't watch it. They never will. That doesn't mean there's no merit
Yeah.
in it because
Mm.
and you use the word journalist, Sarah. That's quite
Yeah.
kind of you as well because they're not
Yeah.
journalists. I don't care if you have drinks with Ganguly every day. It doesn't make you a journalist. There's a reason that Sourav Ganguly, when he was Indian captain, for example, fantastic captain. I love the guy. He's etched in Indian cricket history forever because of what he did as a captain, as a batter. Wonderful player, wonderful captain, great ambassador for India at that time as well, and just standing toe to toe with people from around the world and other captains taking on the Aussies, light for light, pissing Steve Waugh off as well at the toss and all that kind of stuff. I love all that, but Ganguly's a politician at
Mm.
the end of the day, and obviously he's in the
Yeah.
role now as BCCI president, and many would argue who's really running the BCCI, is it him or is it someone else? We don't need to go down that route, but when Ganguly was Indian captain, he knew who to keep close to him. And basically, I've been told this on numerous occasions by BBC colleagues who used to go out to India to cover series. They've been out to Pakistan to cover India's tour there and all that kind of stuff when Ganguly was captain. And he would do the press conference the day before the test match. And, people would be asking about team combinations and all that. And he'd just give the usual answers. Yeah, we'll look into it. We'll see what the pitch is like and all that. Then, as soon as the press conference was over, he'd call every single Kolkata journalist to one
Hmm.
side, take them into a room. This is my team for tomorrow. So he
Yeah.
knew who to keep sweet and who not to, and all that. And sometimes it's these so called journalists who, A, have got maybe a bit of power and influence. I don't know why, because I don't care what half of them think. They just shout most of the time on these news channels over there. And whatever, and it's just the same. They're not really coming out with news lines most of the time. It's just gossip and all that rubbish. So I've got
Yeah.
little respect, but for some reason they're popular. they've got influence, I suppose, with their own TV channels and all this kind of stuff, and keeping people sweet. So,
Yeah.
don't be fooled, Indian cricket
Yeah.
watching public, by the fact that so and so
So yeah.
speaks to all
Yeah.
these players often, and or ex-players, and this one knows this one, and this one was seen in a selfie on Instagram with this guy. Who cares? Who cares? At the
Yeah.
end of the day, you've got to judge them on their journalism, and to make comments like that about women's cricket as well in the 21st
Yeah.
century, for a start, that's sexist. That's you're
Mm.
discriminating against half of the world's population when you make comments like that, and it's just so unhelpful to people from
Yeah.
your own nation as well. When you're
Yeah.
talking about women's IPL, these are Indian women
Yeah.
who you want to do well, who have worked their asses off to get in the position they are. They don't get paid anywhere near as much as female players from other countries. When you've got the
Mm.
richest cricket board in the world, when they're making World Cup finals consistently and doing the country proud with little backing from the cricket board. I'm sorry, there's so much. I mean, look,
Yeah.
I know we touched
Yeah.
on
Yeah. Yeah.
Indian cricket
No, just
journalists
one. Oh,
in the
yeah.
first episode with
Yeah.
Jared, but it just pisses me off the way
Yeah.
some of these guys go about it.
Yeah, just one point to add to this is just these Indian. So this news which we were talking about, Izzy's her article which she had written, so it needed someone in England to bring this topic out, because journalists in India who have that sort of information and that sort of power, so to say, don't really care. It's about that, like, they don't want to report on these issues because they are not world class players. According to them, they are not world class players. So it's not worth reporting this. Also, they are paid, not paid, they don't really care. So it's just it needed someone in England to bring this whole topic out, which again highlights the very sad state of affairs in journalism in India. And also, I'm one other, like, unrelated point, I'm not sure how many people know this, but Saurav Ganguly in a Bengali chat show a few years ago had said that the anchor asked him, what would you do if your daughter Sana Ganguly wanted to play cricket? And he said, I would tell her women don't play cricket. So this was in a Bengali chat show a few years ago.
It's
And
like Shahid Afridi, isn't it?
yeah,
Doesn't want his
yeah,
daughters to play
yeah.
sport.
That's different. He's still the BCCI president. I don't think he was the BCCI president then, but it
Shows
speaks
the
so much.
attitude, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So
And that, to be
just
honest,
that.
that's a shit attitude, to be
That's
honest, as
being
well. So
reflected in how women's cricket is being handled. So yeah.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And I've got a daughter as well who's 8, and
Mm.
getting her into cricket, and she watches women's cricket, men's cricket. She's just starting to understand it at the moment, early days. But I've taken her to the commentary box, and she's met Ebony Rainford Brent, who won 2 World Cups with England. She's met Isha Guha. I'm lucky that I work with these people who are just legends. And I think it's great. Just imagine the kind of inspiration you get from these
Mm.
people, not just as the cricketers even, but just what they're doing in the broadcasting world, and people like yourselves being role models for younger girls as well. It's fantastic, and those outdated attitudes need to stop. And look, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I like women's cricket, well, good, keep following women's cricket, keep supporting women's cricket, keep being vocal about the fact that India needs to do more for its women's cricketers, because there's so much talent there. The money's clearly there. The infrastructure is rubbish at the moment, and it needs to improve in all facets, really. So we hope that is the case, but keep fighting for Indian women's cricket going forward as well. And we look forward to that T20 series as well with England. As I say, we don't know as of yet if it's going to go ahead on time after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. So we'll keep an eye on that. But at some stage, the series will go ahead, T20Is, and then the ODIs as well to follow, which will see the return of Julan Goswami, which we'll delve into a little bit more in future episodes as well, just to talk about her as a servant for Indian cricket. Right, we're almost out of time, but we can't go without
Mm.
talking about the king,
The
not King
king.
Charles III, But
The
King
king.
Kohli, the king is
Yeah.
back. He was trending on Twitter yesterday. Queen Elizabeth II dies age 96. And below that, the king is back. And it's
Yeah.
not King Charles, it's King Kohli, of course. And what a knock. I don't care if it's Afghanistan, if it's, Outer Mongolia. At the end of the day, it's a T20 International 100. And it's against the same Afghanistan bowling attack, by the way, that nearly bowled out Pakistan the night before and nearly embarrassed them just down the road in Sharjah as well. So, Rashid Khan, as well as the spearhead of that bowling attack, Mujib, Faruqi, and these, they did so well the other night. They've got a lot of talent, but when Kohli's in that kind of mood, this is like 2016 GOAT T20 Kohli, isn't it?
Yeah, and no, the best thing is no one expected the 71st to come in a T20I. Even he didn't expect it. He was like Test or ODI. And when he was in his 50s, 60s, so I was in Delhi for the last week and I came back yesterday, little exhausted, long journey. And I was like, I won't really see the match. The toss, Rohit Sharma not playing, KL Rahul captaining. Not a big fan of KL Rahul, the captain. I was like, yeah, India will win, boring dead rubber. The TV was on. Kohli was 50s, 60s. I was like, yeah, he'll get out. Like, it's always been the case. He's 50s, 60s, and then he gets out. Closing on to 80, there was this one British colleague of mine in Wisden, and he was like, I'm good at jinxing people. I jinx that he's out in the 80s. And we, all of us Indians were like, don't say that, don't say that. And then, that just that 100, like that 4 and a 6 to get to the 100. And it was just, it was a just I screamed and there was just goosebumps. There were firecrackers here. There were videos of people in hostels. Like it was just celebration. I just recently saw a tweet which said that they were distributing sweets in the hostel yesterday night. So a mail went to everyone that we are distributing sweets. Please come around 11 p.m. at night and collect it. So just that festive atmosphere, and everyone was happy to see Kohli score that 100. Like, what was your first reaction? Because I was just
Look,
screaming and just,
when he was
yeah.
on 69 or 45, I think I was thinking at that stage, just a couple of balls before that, his strike rate was slowing up quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he hit a couple of boundaries and he was 69 off, I think, 44 or 45 balls. And I saw, what was it, about 3.5 overs left, something like that. I said, this is it. He's on now. He just looked like, right, this is it. I need to, up my scoring now. Back end of the innings, obviously, but you could tell he was thinking of that 100 at that stage when he was late 60s. He knew he's got enough time to do it. He's batting well. He's hitting the ball well. He's finding the gaps crucially as well. Everything's coming off, and it was such a delight to watch that innings. Just the fact that we've been saying, yeah, he's been hitting the ball quite well, but he's been hitting it to fielders. Yesterday, everything, the wrists, when he was driving, just that wrist work at the last moment to find the gaps, the move over to the offside and the flick to leg, and just some trademark shots. He loves it in T20, the cross bat sort of slog over to cow corner almost, which he makes look more elegant than I make sound. But that sort of trademark T20 Virat Kohli cross bat smack for 6 was back, and it was back consistently yesterday. And amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And I sat my daughter down after school to say, watch this, because I've been telling her for 2 years since she started to sort of play cricket and get into it that this guy is like some god, and she's never seen him score
Yeah.
100. She's obviously been alive for the hundreds, but she didn't used to watch any kind of cricket. So I even took her to Trent Bridge to see England against India, and I think he hit the 6, the 4, and then he got out on the third ball. So she's just like, who is this guy? Why'd you keep going on about him? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you get to watch an innings like that, and it was just unbelievable, fantastic. The reaction, the smile on his face, the relief, the hug to Rishabh Pant, the kiss of his wedding ring, the words afterwards with the tribute to Anushka. and his daughter as well, and
Yeah.
it was just
That
perfect,
was,
really. It was
yeah.
just
There was
perfect.
that image of, when Kohli is celebrating, there was that elderly supporter in the
Sardaji,
background,
yeah,
yeah, he was, just saluting Kohli for
bowing to
not
him,
only
yeah.
yesterday, yeah, not only yesterday's knock, but for everything which he's done, and he's deserved it. And I think that was all of us yesterday. Is just, just I don't think any other cricketer scoring 100 after so long has been such a long wait. Nothing would have made us as happy. The Asia Cup performance, yeah, it's terrible. But after yesterday, just, you're like, okay, Kohli is back. Asia Cup, yeah, not the best
Whatever.
tournament, but Kohli is back. Who cares?
Whatever. Would
Yeah.
you, quick
Yeah.
question, would you, at the start of the Asia Cup, if somebody told you that India would be knocked out at the stage they were, they'd beat Pakistan once, they'd lose to Pakistan once, but they'd be out in the Super Fours. However, Kohli would
Kohli
get
would score
122 not out of 61 balls in the final group game and hitting the ball as well as he ever has. Would you have taken that?
in hindsight, that would have seemed a dream at the start. If someone tells me a month ago Kohli is scoring 100 but India is knocked out, not in the World Cup, I wouldn't have exchanged, like, made that trade in the World Cup. But Asia Cup, yeah, with the World Cup ahead, perfect timing for him to, sort of get back into rhythm. Not saying he's there yet, there's so much more to come from him. And just going forward, there are going to be no more predictions from my side. Maybe I reverse jinx the all my predictions have, Kohli shouldn't be in the T20I team, and here he is scoring 100. Probably I reverse jinx everything. So yeah.
Well, you said that. I kind of agreed with you at the start that
Yeah.
maybe he's not the best guy to beat. But if he is, and I've always said this, look, I don't think they've got the guts to put Rishabh Pant at the top of the order. He's just not in good form at the moment in this format of the game. So they're not going to put him at the top of the order. So if Kohli plays, I've said this for years, since 2016, since he had that sort of brilliant year in the IPL, opening the innings for RCB and scoring hundreds. He needs to open in
Yeah.
T20Is, but they've persisted with KL Rahul just time and
Yesterday
time
I
again. And KL's
Yeah.
done okay at international T20 level, but if you've got Rohit and Kohli there, I'm sorry, but KL doesn't make your top two, might not make the side.
Mm.
Simple
Yeah,
as that.
yesterday, I don't know if you heard the press conference where someone asked KL Rahul uh, whether Kohli should open, and his response was, "Do you want me to sit out?" So, not the best comment coming from a captain. You'd say he was leading yesterday. In the past, Kohli has even sacrificed his number three position for KL Rahul in ODIs, to just get that rhythm and all. So that wasn't the best comment from KL Rahul, you would say. And again, not really biggest fan of KL Rahul. Just his overall, persona in T20Is, and I it's just, not a comment that sat very well with
I
me.
think it comes down to, does Kohli want to open?
Yeah.
But I don't think he's got kind of the same sway as Sachin had when Sachin was playing. We compare the two, and we're not comparing them as batters, but just in terms of just being the greatest of their generation. Sachin had the power. Wherever Sachin wanted to bat, he batted. It didn't
Yeah.
matter. He used to go out to bat with Ganguly. Ganguly was the captain. They were both opening in ODIs, and you know, Ganguly would have had the conversation the night before, maybe, who's going to face the first ball. And they used to swap time, sometimes. And generally, Ganguly would always have to take the first ball because sometimes they wouldn't decide. They'd go out to the middle and they'd be sort of looking at the pitch and deciding which end to go to. And Ganguly would ask the question always to Sachin, "You want to face?" And
Yeah.
Sachin would just turn. He wouldn't say anything, just go to the non-strikers and ignore him. And
Yeah.
sometimes they would have decided the night before that Sachin said, "All right, I'm going to face." And Sachin just didn't fancy it on the day. So he would just walk to the non-strikers and stand there. And that's it, just wouldn't say a word, wouldn't look at Ganguly. So he had that kind of power where
Mm.
even when he's opening, he decides, against his captain if he wants to face or not. he decides if he wants to open or not. I mean, there was a brief period where Sachin was coming in at 4 in ODIs, and maybe that was a sort of group decision that was made, but generally he batted where he wants to bat. Kohli seems to me not to be in that kind of same diva category, you could call it, or godlike category where he can
Yeah.
just do what he wants. So maybe it's not just Kohli decision, but I think if he really wants to open and he makes that case to Rohit and to Rahul Dravid, then he can open. And I think he should, because he needs to bat in the power
Yeah.
play, and that's the best
But they're
position
not
for
dropping
him.
the vice captain. They're not dropping the vice captain. No matter what happens, he is their future captain.
Vice
We don't
captain
like
Hardik
it.
Pandya, it should be. But we'll
Yeah.
come on to that
We
in future episodes, I'm
yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
listen, that's all we've got time for. Obviously, it's been a disappointing Asia Cup, but great to see Kohli back in the runs. And do join us for more on the women's series as well, the T20Is between England and India, followed by the ODIs. And yeah, thanks for listening this week. Do join us once again. Remember to download the 99.94 app. Contact us on social media if you've got any questions for us, at Nikesh Rugani, at SWaris16. Thanks very much, and see you next time.